Now let's explore a completely different frontier with Alex Lupke. Please welcome Alex.
Hello, everyone. Today, I'm here to convince you to think small. My background is actually from an area quite large, outer space large, building satellites, other unmanned systems, and autonomous systems. But today's journey is not really to go and explore the vast reaches of space, nor to explore the deep mysteries that exist in the ocean. But today's fantastic voyage is going to be inside the human body itself. Inside each and every one of us holds mysteries and wonders that, if unlocked, leads to better health, better performance, longevity. But seeing inside and being able to understand what's actually happening in each and every individual is quite difficult. So let's look at a little bit of history. Since the beginning of time, initially all we had access to was pretty rudimentary surgeries to be able to look inside and understand how we work. Now, over the last 100 years or so, we've had phenomenal improvements to be able to look from the outside, X-rays and MRIs, and a really tremendous technology to try to see what's happening from the outside, but it's quite complex still, and it still limits our access. What I propose the future is, and what we want to start to explore today, is how do we go inside the human body with microrobotics? There's a lot left to discover, and that's what we want to do. I'm going to set a simple goal for today, which is to build a wireless robot guided inside the human body under its own power that transmits live video out in real time. Not too ambitious for a first cut here. But let's talk about some of the challenges for this. The first one, small size. You have to get inside the human body. There's not a lot of room to maneuver or to work around. So how do you get your robots to be able to be down and functional at that small size? Second one, power efficiency. The human body is a moving system with muscles and tissue and full of fluids. It actually takes quite a lot of force to be able to move around inside that type of environment. Third one, 3D movement. How we're constructed is essentially all three-dimensional. So whatever you're going to be exploring or you're going to be figuring out about yourself, you need to really be able to visualize it in 3 dimensions. Next, high video rate or sensor data. Whatever data you get out, there's a lot to discover. We have to be able to get a lot of data out in order to really understand what's happening. And last, obviously, is universal and safe access. We're all a little bit different, and what we have access to is different. So whatever we're building or designing, we need to remember universal and safe access. So let me introduce you to PillBot. PillBot is a small, wireless, remote-controlled robot that is designed to be swallowed and operate in a fluid water environment. So PillBot has things you would expect. It has a live video camera, so you would expect to be able to see the live video. It has circuitry in it in order to control and to manage and to operate the robot. It has LEDs inside the human body. It's quite dark, so you need to provide your own light. It has a data transceiver to get that data out, no wires. It has a battery, pretty important, have its own power. And now, how it maneuvers is it has 3 pump jet thrusters. So these, again, in the water environment, is able to squirt water in 6 different directions and give you that 3-dimensional movement. Let's see where we are and what it took to get to this robot here. So this is about 5 years of development. And what we started with was not quite swallowable. And we've worked our way down and gotten smaller and smaller. So where we are today, and the robot that I'm going to walk through with you today is this one. We have smaller ones, but recognize every single robot is fundamentally different in how it works and how it's constructed and how it operates. So every single one along here is really quite a different robot. Let's talk about this first one here. So this one we called PillBot because that's where we tested it. We'd throw it in a swimming pool and we'd swim it around. And for us, it was just to make sure that it operated about as we expected. It had about the right thrust and performance. This had a Wi-Fi connection to it, so that's 2.4 gigahertz, which actually does not transmit through water well at all. So we realized that, yes, it's about the right shape and performance, number of thrusters and all, but we really needed to improve the thrusters. We worked our way down, and eventually we got to smaller sizes, like about that size there. And then things really started to change, okay? So this is low Reynolds number flow, which all of a sudden becomes very non-intuitive. So the Reynolds number is the ratio between the inertial forces and viscous forces. So your working fluid, like water, becomes more like honey, becomes very sticky, and becomes non-intuitive. So again, we had to redesign the thrusters and exactly how those work. I'll give you an example. This was a design. This was a particular kind of paddle fluid flow here. And notice that you would expect this thruster to have fluid jet out the back side here, but it didn't. It kind of goes up. This is called the Coanda effect. When you have this rotation, vorticity in your working fluid and it's at that low Reynolds number, it operates like that. So all of a sudden, quite non-intuitive. Another critical challenge for us was to get the buoyancy and the balance. So if you're in a working fluid and you're floating like this, it's very efficient. You're not having to fight gravity. You have enough things to fight in there. But getting your balance and your buoyancy working just right was pretty critical. So on this early robot, notice we had to have this floaty band around the belly there in order to get it to work. But what this at least showed us, that said if we could nail the weight and the volume and the performance, that it would have kind of nice controls. So this gave us an early design on that. Let me go into some of the details on the robot that we're going to go through today. So it has all of these components that make it up and put it together. So let's start walking through some of these details. First thing I want to mention is we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We actually leverage cell phone technology. There's already a tremendous amount of technology out there that's miniaturized and high performance. So this motor, this is the vibration motor in your cell phone. So we can just take those motors and we can use those. Put a propeller on them, all of a sudden I have the start of a thruster. Similarly, that black dot, that's the camera that's on your cell phone also. Super high performance camera. I don't have to invent that. I can go ahead and just pull that off the shelf and put it into our robots. What is very complex is the circuitry. So as you see all the robots out on the lawn, there's a lot of performance that has to be built into these robots. That all has to be built in here. So this flex circuit has your FPGAs with real-time image compression on it, has all your microcontrollers, has your transceiver radio, has your power management and motor controls. It's a lot of horsepower that's just built into this. What we do is we take this circuit and we fold it up, kind of like origami, in order to get it to fit in a really tiny volume. So this has, you can sort of see this front-facing camera, because what you want is to be able to look out the front like you're flying a spaceship. It has that antenna around the outside. Now this is a tuned antenna, 915 megahertz, so that it can go through and transmit data through the human body and through water. And everything else is folded up into a nice compact volume. Back to those thrusters. So again, these are the motors. We can take those motors, we can 3D print a propeller, put it on the front, or a variety of different propellers. This is fiberglass loaded epoxy that gives us really tight tolerances and a really stiff propeller needed for the type of forces that we're generating. And then we put those motors together in a series of 3 different directions. So this gets us, we want 3-dimensional flight, right? And so we need to be able to go forward, back, left, right, up, down. Here, these 2 motors, the forward, back, also give you differential thrust to go left and right. So you can imagine basically how that is giving you the provided thrust. But the thrust has to be directed also. So we have stators. So think of this as the flow that's coming out has to be directed through the center of mass of the system to get intuitive flight controls. So you have to have stators. The self-power storage is a battery. So this is a lithium-ion battery. We had to go to lithium-ion because we needed a really high C rating. We need to be able to dump power very quickly. Most medical devices are designed to basically last days, weeks, even months. We're going to be doing an exam within 5 or 10 minutes. And so that FPGA and those motors burn a lot of power. So I got to be able to have, the C rating on a lithium ion is like 4 to 6 times a traditional battery. So we need to be able to dump power fast. So it's a very kind of special battery kind of construction there. And then you take all of this and you put it in a hermetic seal. So this is, again, going into the human body. There's a lot of forces on there. It's an acidic environment, so it's a pretty harsh environment. So think spacecraft, harsh environment, all of that capability inside the human body is pretty harsh. And so that hermetic seal, in order to keep fluids out and keep water out and keep everything kind of nice and safe. One more view here on the back. So here you can see kind of the lumens as water kind of gets ingested inside the robot. Notice you don't see any propellers on the outside. Those propellers are all embedded completely inside. So those propellers are never really going to be touching any part of the human body. So that ingests water in and out. Now, how do we make these kind of robots? By hand. Very, very small, precise work. So almost all the work in assembling them is done with tweezers under a microscope in order to assemble, build, and test these robots. So it takes a long time to put one of these robots together, but today we're going to go ahead and take a look at how they come together. So here again, we see these lumens where fluid flow comes in and out in the 3 different directions. And so let's go ahead and grab one of these robots and let's turn it on. So this here is the current size robot that we call PillBot. Again, PillBot is now finally at that performance level we've been hoping for. It's the right size, you can swallow it. It has all the performance of battery life. It's able to get that live video outside. And so now we're finally basically able to fly this robot. In order to fly this robot, I'd like to actually invite to the stage Dr. Vivek Kumbhari. Dr. Kumbhari is the head of gastroenterology at the Mayo Clinic. And it's really important to work with doctors like Dr. Kumbhari in order, when you're designing equipment like this, to make sure that we're designing the right type of performance and safety into the robot. So let me turn this robot on. The way you turn this robot on, it's hermetically sealed. We have a photodiode in the front. And so after I shine a light on it, it basically engages and turns on. And then we're going to pop it here into the fish tank, and off you go.
So for the purposes of this demonstration here, we are actually able to control PillBot with this game controller. However, PillBot is agnostic to any particular interface, and we're actually able to use this with a smartphone, a tablet, or even a keyboard. Now you can see here that we're able to interrogate this tank in a matter of seconds, despite its large surface area and its volume. Now keep in mind that the human stomach is actually much smaller than this, and furthermore, this is actually larger than any internal organ in the human body. So if we can navigate this surface area in a matter of minutes, then we should be able to achieve a lot in such a manner. Now we're going to start with the human stomach, because like this, we're actually able to sort of fill the stomach with fluid as well. And so that should actually allow us to replicate PillBot in an initial simple manner as we move to patients. Now, as you can appreciate here, the day we're able to use micro-robots in the human body will be an inflection point in our ability to live longer and healthier lives. Our vision is to do so in a simple, inexpensive, accurate, and accessible manner.
I'm going to go ahead and grab this guy. Notice we're finally, yeah, thank you. Notice we're finally able to communicate with this robot through the live video feed here. I'm going to go ahead and try to get that up on the screen for us. Turn this back on. So that 915 megahertz antenna, let's see if we can get the live video up. There we go. All right, Viv.
Yeah. So throughout my career, I've performed invasive procedures for the simple purposes of visualizing internal organs. I find this unacceptable. An invasive procedure is arguably justified if we're going to perform some sort of complex surgery, but not simply to take a look. I believe in large part the medical community has been far too tolerant of the risks and expenses involved with procedure-based diagnostics. To be able to decouple the patient from a physical hospital and perform a diagnostic test such as this in one's own home would be transformative. In a moment, we hope to inspire you towards believing that direct visualization of internal organs is possible without the need to go to a hospital or undergo anesthesia. We're going to explore the human body right here and now. Alex, go ahead and swallow PillBot. So as you may have observed here, it took less than a few seconds once swallowed for PillBot to traverse through the esophagus, and we're now in the stomach. So the esophagus is narrow and under the influence of gravity, and so transit is relatively efficient. So we're in the stomach, and one of the challenges to overcome, whether this is driven manually or by an operator or autonomously, is that the stomach is a dynamic structure which is in constant motion. I mean, remember, its function is to churn contents. However, filling the stomach with water does temper some of these contractions. So PillBot does need to be agile enough to be able to navigate to all areas despite these motions. So as we explore the stomach here, what we're looking for is subtle changes in surface architecture. These changes in surface pattern could include slight ulcers, prominent blood vessels, areas of narrowing, and so on. Compared to the conventional systems that I use to look inside the stomach today, seeing underwater actually confers a magnified view. And so this is to my advantage. Aside from that, I can maneuver throughout the stomach very similar to that which I use my conventional endoscopes in the patients that I treat routinely. Now, to visualize I can visualize in the entire stomach. I can go to specific areas that pique my curiosity and interrogate them further. Now, what's particularly exciting is that I have the ability to engage Alex during this process, which allows us to explore the stomach together. And you can imagine that this leads to a better appreciation that he would have for any diagnosis. And so he's going to be far more likely to be more compliant with any therapy, now seeing what he can. Now, though they're relatively simple, this system could be made even easier by having an augmented reality headset, which through 3D visualization, as if we're sitting inside the stomach looking around. And we could use AI to support detection of abnormalities, as well as characterization of abnormalities. Now, this robot is for the stomach, but the whole body needs this capability. Organ systems such as the heart, the liver, and the brain are very hard to access and can be made much easier to access with these robots. Now, they would have to be smaller and leverage different motive forces, but it's easily achievable. So there we go. In a matter of minutes, conceivably from anywhere in the world, I can explore the insides of someone's stomach easily, safely, effectively, and at low cost. It's time to make this dream of micro-robotics in the human body a reality. Thank you.
Yummy. Okay, so now that we have really quick access to looking inside the human body, what do we want to do with that, right? This is kind of interesting, a little bit different. AI is a big piece of what's going to happen here. AI gives us automation on a couple levels. First of all, in terms of that data link, what data that we're getting out? How is the robot performing? You know, how can I optimize that? AI can actually help do a lot of that performance optimization. Second thing is navigation. Dr. Kambari did a great job of navigating it, but imagine if it just did that autonomously. It goes around there, it scans the whole stomach, it generates that 3D map. Now you can go ahead and have all that data done autonomously. Along with the analysis of that, looking at that stomach, you have the diagnosis and the treatment that comes along with that. So imagine that as we collect all this data, we get the treatment and the diagnosis that comes along with that. That is also able to help train AI models. Let's talk a little bit about some specific models that we'd want to train. So AI tools for in this case, we would want to use all that data, and initially we'll do some really deep learning algorithms in order to do that. Pattern matching, image recognition, we're all pretty familiar with those basic tools, but now we have a vast amount of data. Imagine that I swallow a robot this morning, and I change something in my diet, and I swallow again on Wednesday, and again on Friday, and again next week. Now all of a sudden I have all this mass amount of data about me and what my conditions are and how I can basically optimize that. One other tricky thing, though, is that the body is moving. So you saw kind of the stomach is moving. So it's not just images, it's moving images and changing images. So that 3D reconstruction and the structure of motion is a really important set of tools in the world of AI that we actually have to use in order to get this type of data out most effectively. And then, of course, we'll put on top of that natural language processing and large language models, because now that I have all this phenomenal data, how am I, as an individual, as a person in the world, going to access that information and use it effectively for myself? So this is a lot going on in the field of AI. But there's also more on the future of robotics as well. So I talked about, first of all, that automatic control. I'm going to have to put a gyro and accelerometer on there, which are great. They're chip-based. Same thing as like time-of-flight sensors, where you can actually get an image signal. Think of it like a mini LiDAR. It sends out a pulse of energy, and it gets the signal back and the phase back. And now all of a sudden I can see three-dimensionally where I'm at and what I'm looking at. The sensors, the image sensors we have right now, we're just looking at visible. They're actually a pretty wide spectrum sensor. So I can get that low infrared, and I can see heat, or I could see blood flow. So there's a lot more that we can get just out of those sensors. And imagine other sensors that you want to measure while you're there. You're there, go ahead and measure stuff. Lab on chip. Now we're kind of talking about the far future, but imagine if I'm sitting there, why don't I just grab a sample of material and tell you exactly what the condition is, tell you exactly what the symptom is or the treatment is. And that type of technology is being developed currently as well. Pill surgeon, okay, if I'm there, I'm analyzing something, why don't I do something? Why don't I inject a medicine? Why don't I take a tissue sample? Why don't I cut or cauterize? Whatever you need to do, I could do all that. I'm there already. Let's go ahead and add those types of capabilities. But you don't have to do it all on one robot. We have this beautiful thing called Swarm. So I have one robot that holds and another one that does the cutting or whatever. So swarm robotics inside the human body is definitely a way to go. How do you get super, super small? There's a lot of really interesting manufacturing techniques that exist today to be able to get down to the nano level. So micro electromechanical systems is an example. This is now gears and motors and other components that can be built at literally the nano scale. So that exists today. We can just go there to get to the nano robot. And the last one, this tricky one, is power. Power is pretty fundamental in being able to have this work. But they're working on it. Everyone's really excited by the electrification of everything. So think about solid-state batteries. Think about wireless power. Think about supercapacitors, right? There's even nano-diamond batteries, right, where you actually have nuclear-powered batteries that could last your entire lifetime. So there's a lot of work being done in the power space that you would want to sort of leverage here in the world of microrobotics as well. So here we are. We're inside the human body. Now what? It's kind of, we're at the entrance of a new era, right? Where you can go right now, and as Dr. Kabari did, I could transmit this from around the world in a remote location, maybe even from the ISS. So this is great for us to be able to bring the hospital and that capability pretty much anywhere. But imagine actually a distant, not too distant future, where you're on a ride at Disneyland, right? And you have a swarm of nanobots that's working on an inoperable brain tumor right then and there. Think of the dignity of health, and think of the improvement in all of our lives if we're able to bring this to the reality. So I would like to invite all of you on this journey. Think about how we can do this. But the first step is we need to think small. Thank you very much.